Welcome to the Backyard Professor videos once again. I'm Kerry Schertz, the Backyard Professor. I'm out here in the middle of January on a very cold morning. It's about 15 degrees right now. Up on the Snake River, taking a look at the wildlife. Lots and lots of the ducks and geese and birds collect on the river, and beautiful to watch them. Very interesting to watch them. I'm going to talk about the theme of the facsimiles in the Book of Abraham, and I've been reading the Bible in Hebrew this year. I'm going to try to get it read in Hebrew, and that's fascinating in and of itself. And of course, we have our Book of Abraham, and so I'll be discussing things like that. But a lot of people are asking about the Joseph Smith's translation of the Book of Abraham and the facsimiles, and of course they argue Joseph Smith couldn't translate a thing. He was constantly wrong in his analysis. And I want to talk about the idea. Now, we know that later this spring, Hugh Nibley's long-awaited One Eternal Round book on facsimile number 2 is going to be published. And it's been decades in the making, and so we're excited about that. So I'm probably going to realistically be talking an awful lot about that also, and start bringing up the facsimiles again. Then I'm going to try to talk about, the Old Testament. That's a very spectacular subject for we LDS, and it's interesting that we have so much extra materials of the patriarchs. Moses, the book of Moses, Enoch that is described in the book of Moses. We've got the book of Abraham. And now, of course, in the last 30, 40 years, many numerous books of Adam have been discovered. And so the patriarchs are a huge subject. And with Nibley's last book coming out, One Eternal Round, I'm going to, of course, focus again on the facsimiles and the book of Abraham issues. And this is the one I've been waiting for a decade. So I'm going to talk about the idea of translation from the Egyptologists' ideas themselves, because the critics say Joseph Smith couldn't translate anything correctly, and yet he left us thousands of pages of materials of translations of ancient texts. It's the most astonishing thing. But let's see what the Egyptologists say about translation. They say the Egyptologists translate the papyri correctly, and Joseph Smith is incorrect. Let's look at this subject of translation from the Egyptologists' words themselves and see what we find, shall we? Now, there's one thing that I have to seriously propose as a student of the Scriptures. The scholarship on the Bible has not come to any final conclusions any more than the scholarship on the ancient Egyptian religion, philosophy, politics, history, etc. That's why there's so many journals out there. Take the most prominent biblical scholarly journal, the Journal of Biblical Literature, the JBL. It's been around since 1843, I think. Tens of thousands of articles. I've been reading them for years now, and the scholars are still proposing ever new translations of specific passages in the Old Testament, because we still don't have the fullest or best context, historically, religiously, or even in translation. They're constantly utilizing an archaeological discovery from the Nuzi tablets, the Bar Kokhba documents, the Dead Sea Scrolls, the ancient Babylonian, the ancient Egyptian, the ancient Greek, and yes, even the ancient Hebrew materials. And nobody has a final conclusion yet. We're still trying to find a more correct context, a more correct translation. Why do you think there's so many blasted translations of the Bible out there? See, the way the Anti-Mormon critic works is, they've already determined there's only one answer. Joseph Smith is wrong. Period. Nothing else matters. And they will research, or they'll quote an authority here and there to show that Joseph Smith couldn't translate Egyptian. Joseph Smith couldn't translate Hebrew. Joseph Smith was obviously a phony. He was a kook because he doesn't agree with the scholars. What do you do when you find that the scholars don't agree with the scholars? I'm dead serious. None of the scholars in the biblical research materials that they use, none of them have come to final conclusions, none of them have the final answers, and none of them say they do. The best of biblical scholarship in the Journal of Biblical Literature, I've read hundreds of those articles stretching way back into the early 1940s and 30s, all the way up to right now today, immediately. None of them say, we really know what happened. We really do understand the ancient Hebrew mindset. We realize their actual true beliefs. We finally have a good and perfect translation of the Bible. No such thing exists. No such thing exists in the Egyptian materials either. Now this is so interesting because the critics will quote an authority here or an authority there. They don't even know the languages themselves. They don't study it at all. They're too busy playing with their video games and working and all that, just like all the rest of us. But they have one scholar, and they use that scholar as the basis for clubbing Joseph Smith. It's so fascinating because even the Egyptologists say, we don't have a clue what the ancient Egyptians really thought. We don't even know what they meant. Yes, we can translate their materials, but we don't know what they mean. Now, this is a stunning thing. The critics assume that if something's been translated, we now finally know what it means. We know what the ancients thought, believed, hoped for, feared, and wished. And we know nothing of the sort. Nothing. But they won't read the Egyptologists or the literature to really understand the true nature of Egyptology. Why do you think they keep holding so many conferences? John Gee's writings, the LDS Egyptologist, just this last fair conference, I acquired another 10 of his articles that he has published at various conferences throughout the world. They're still holding conferences and conclaves of scholars to try to figure out what the pyramid texts are about, what the coffin texts are about, what is the Egyptian Book of the Dead. Even that is a misunderstood translation. That's not the correct translation for the ancient Egyptians. They didn't believe it was a book of the dead. They thought it was a book of the living. It's technically translated the book of going forth by day. It's about ceremonial religious initiation. But the critics don't want to see it that way. They say, oh, well, no, Robert Rittner or someone else has translated the papyri, and Joseph Smith's translation is different. Therefore, Joseph Smith is wrong. What the critics fail to realize is even the Egyptologists translating these texts don't have the final word. That doesn't mean they know what's going on either with the ancient Egyptians. And they say so. I've got some great quotes I'm going to read to you right now. They're serious about this. The Bible, after 2,000 years, I mean, we've been at this for millennia now, folks, it is still being retranslated and reassessed. The Psalms is one of the most translated books in the Old Testament. There are new translations coming out of the Psalms, about the Psalms, probably every 3 or 4 years. Robert Alter has just recently done one within the last 10 years. Every one of them are still trying to grasp what is going on. What do these mean? What is the actual themes? Where did these themes come from? We still are looking for the answers, even though it's been translated. A translation is not the answer giving us the final meaning. A translation is a scholar's attempt to understand what this might mean. And no two scholars agree with any other two scholars' translations. That's why they still keep retranslating stuff. It's the most fascinating thing. Get that Journal of Biblical Literature. Start reading these articles. I'm telling you what, no two scholars agree with each other. There is always new discussion going on. It's the same with the Egyptologists.